Hey everybody, I'm Don Edwards, and I want to introduce you to an old friend of mine, Vic DiCosola. Vic is the founder, owner, CEO, headmaster, whatever, of Tactical Night Vision Company, also known as TNVC. Vic, it's good to hang out with you. We're going to tell some stories that people probably haven't heard about the history of night vision. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks, Don. We do go way back. It's hard to believe that I started TNVC officially in my garage in 2003, working at Lockheed Skunk Works, and quite the background before I started night vision between law enforcement and my DoD aerospace career. I first started selling night vision in 2003, and with the help start of a friend of mine at that time of Optics HQ up in San Francisco, California. Okay. And he wanted me to just start selling some Raptors at the time to some law enforcement folks. And that's how it all started. It kind of boomeranged from then. And as you know, Don, we talked about this earlier, night vision really wasn't mainstream back then. There was maybe 4 or 5 companies, I think, that were selling night vision at the time. I think Night Vision Equipment Company, Moral Vision, Night Vision Depot at the time, Bill Group Jr., Bill Group Sr. owned Night Vision Equipment Company, U.S. Night Vision. And not afraid to bring up the past companies. They're still around, I think, now.
Oh, yeah. They're the pioneers.
Yeah, they are the pioneers of basically who I looked up to and got started. I didn't know too much about the night vision business, none at all. I used night vision for a while in law enforcement back in the mid-'90s. I used a PVS 10, a Pocket Scope 10 from North American Integrated Technologies from NATE, which evolved into my first PVS 14 Gen 2 Plus in 1994. And we talked a little bit about price. Yeah, they were peaking at about $4,000 when the first PVS 14 came out.
Right. It's interesting that the prices haven't come down per se, except when you factor in inflation and cost of living. You're paying about the same now as we paid or the government paid for much more inferior, quality, not quality, but lower technology, older technology.
Sure, FOM 1600,
15 years ago,
1600
whatever.
FOM, that was it.
And then, but now that, back then, that $3,000 or $4,000 was a lot of money.
Sure.
Not that it isn't now,
yep.
But it was way more. I mean, the annual salary of, for a family was way less. The cost of living was so much less. So it's not that prices are going to come down. The numbers are going to probably stay about the same, and that's what we've seen over the years, right? Is the numbers on the price tags have stayed about the same, but what you're buying is so much better, and your buying power is better.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, with the current state of the art, L3 unfilmed super gain tubes are incredible, off the charts that we've never seen with some of the outrageous FOMs that we've seen out there. We've evolved in such a short time in great depths, when a lot of folk not too long ago were saying, analog night vision is archaic. It's basically done. We're going to see digital, and we can probably talk about digital a little later in the conversation, but night vision is still alive and strong, analog night vision, and the FOMs keep getting higher and higher and higher. Every year I think, wow, isn't 3,000, 3,500 FOM enough? And we're seeing, from guys like Pat Poirier at L3 at the time, telling us about, 4,000 FOM systems. And for clip-ons, it's amazing. You can't go wrong when you're looking at a magnified optic with high FOM systems like that.
100%.
Night vision, the business side of it was strictly accidental, as I talked about. A friend of mine at Optics HQ getting me involved with the night vision. I used it for quite a bit of time before I started selling it, per se. But I entered the Air Force because I wasn't doing a lot of anything growing up in Chicago, drinking too much and things like that. Hadn't quite smoked cigars just yet, not Cubans anyway. So I started just as growing up in a very, very poor neighborhood in Chicago where I grew up. And my dad was from Italy. I'm a first-generation Italian kid. And my dad, as I talked about and other things I've talked about, is probably the smartest man I've ever met, and very, very wise man. And one day I decided, which I firmly believe to this day, I went in the Air Force, was divine intervention. I had no focus. No one told me to go in the military. My dad was the only one that served in the military, only because he got drafted after he came from Italy. In 1951, he came here. In 1952, he came here to America from Italy right after World War II, dodging bombs and with the Allied invasion, obviously, in the war in 45. So he came to America in 51 to 52, somewhere in there, and he served in the Korean War, got drafted probably 1956, 57, got drafted in the Korean War, was a cook. Who knew? Being an Italian guy, got to cook. So I was the first person after him to go in the military, was in the Air Force in 1981. I was very, very fortunate that I didn't know at the time. I was fortunate that I was diagnosed color blindness. I was like, go figure. I looked in a book of 13, numbers and color numbers that pop out, and I missed 3 of them, and they classify as colorblind. And it was really unfortunate because I didn't want to work the job they assigned me to, which was sheet metal, because colorblindness guys all went to the sheet metal because you didn't need to see color, I guess, working sheet metal. So I at that time I wanted to do air traffic control. I wanted to do combat control. I wanted to do in that technical field because I didn't have a technical background back in the day, but I surely had a technical interest. Mm-hmm. It always had driven me because I was always curious about things. I wanted to know how things worked. I wasn't very good with my hands back at the time, but I definitely wanted to learn. I had a capability of learning a lot, and I wanted to absorb everything I could, where growing up in Chicago, I didn't have that technical canness like that. Mm-hmm. So went in the Air Force, became a sheet metal guy, and I was very, very, very fortunate early on to work on the Have Blue program, which is, everyone knows now, I guess it's the F-117 program, highly, highly classified back then, a low observable first stealth aircraft the United States ever deployed. And it set the course of the rest of my career, per se, of all the DoD jobs I've worked, from Hughes Space and Com, now Boeing Space and Satellite, McDonnell Douglas Helicopters, now Boeing Helicopter, Northrop B-2 Division, and eventually Lockheed Skunk Works. In Palmdale, California, and where I started TNVC unofficially in 2003. So
in your garage.
In my garage, yes. So I was working as a IPT program lead for the Joint Strike Fighter Radome program at Skunk Works. And when I started selling night vision out of my garage with the help of my wife and my little son boxing things up, and my wife was a school teacher at the time, and she would take the boxes the next day that I would box up at night, and she'd take them to the local UPS store while I was working at Lockheed. And during my lunch hour at Lockheed, I'd call customers back. At night when I got home, I'd call customers back. And it got to a point I was so busy, I had to make a major decision. Do I not grow a TNVC and still earn a basically guaranteed paycheck, if you want to call it DoD aerospace, anything guaranteed, far from it, but working on your own with an unknown, working for yourself is scary. I mean, so at the time, my wife was very against it, in a great way. She supported everything I did, but obviously she was worried about having a steady flow of money coming in. So at that time, a very I would say one of the most influential people in my life in this industry was Rich, the founder and owner of Magpul, and he was very, very awesome at the time to let me actually work the booth of Magpul. And Magpul was just getting off the ground basically at the SHOT Show. Before PMAG, before any of that, they were making, a few composite stops.
Actually,
yeah.
the Magpul.
The Magpuls, yeah, the Magpuls, yeah. And they were also making at that time the precision rifle stock, the PRS, the first cheek riser stock for the AR. So obviously us, it was a perfect match. I was fielding Raptors and on some AR platforms, and the huge high cheek weld of the Raptors, Rich had a precision rifle stock that was perfect for that application. So I actually went to work he invited me to actually be in the Magpul booth way back when. And it was kind of the first breakthrough of TNVC working with a big industry, which Magpul was a large company at that time, but know where they're at now. So, at that time I met Drake back in the day, who was very influential back in the day for Magpul. And Rich, finally, the day I made the call to either lay myself off at Lockheed or grow the company, that's what I did. I had to make a decision. Either I stay at Lockheed, not grow TNVC, or basically lay myself off. And I did. I think I made the right choice. So here we are. I laid myself off of Lockheed Skunk Works. I remember driving home my little Toyota Paseo, 76 miles one way back to California. and to Loma Linda, California from Palmdale, 76 mile one-way trip. And it was my wife who was very nervous on the phone. I was talking to her on the way home, and he was like, "Honey, are we doing the right thing?" And I said, "I think we are. I think I'm really good at this night vision gig. I think we have a great following already," which was very small. There wasn't many companies, and I just then we'll probably talk about we started talking about night vision on the internet because no one was really talking night vision at that time. It was really in the shadows. It was strange when I think back. No one was talking about night vision. It was
all on mostly air15.com back in the day. That was the only place that
it was when I brought it there.
People
it really
were talking about it.
Yeah, there was an FAQ on ARFCOM. I think it's still there. It's like it's hundreds of thousands of reads on that topic, and it's a night vision FAQ, and it goes back to 2005, and no one was really talking night vision at the time. It was a very in the shadow type technology. You had the 4 or 5 major companies I discussed earlier that were selling it, but no one was really talking about night vision. It wasn't mainstream.
Not in the consumer market.
Yeah, not at all. Federal law enforcement, military obviously was using them. Obviously at the time, you had the PVS-7s, the PVS-14s were just coming out back in the day where they're becoming more mainstream. The Anvis goggles were coming along. It was nice to bring night vision to the mainstream and actually talk about what it did. What the technology meant, how it was a force multiplier, why our military was using it, and obviously, Don, back in the day with your tenure in the military, we really did own the night back then. Yeah. We really did own the night. Our adversaries weren't feeling a tenth of what they're feeling now, and they had nowhere near the capabilities that we had at night, back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, back then we were the only ones with that technology. It's proliferated like it's going to, like any technology, and we still have better, higher quality stuff, but now the playing field is a little bit more leveled, and I think that knowledge and understanding and training is key. The key to leveraging that technology against other guys. Let's talk about tube data sheets. Those are something that right now the guys buying night vision take for granted, I think.
Oh yeah,
and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like there's something there. They want to know what the numbers mean, and they definitely are using their knowledge and understanding of those sheets to make their purchases, and rightly so, because for the average guy, that's a lot of money to spend. So they want to know that they're getting the best quality they can. But what they don't all probably know is how that came about, and the fact that those were not always available. And every chance I get, I tell the story, because you get, in my opinion, almost 100%, if not almost 100% of the credit for the current status of data sheets being the norm when it comes to night vision. But can you tell me and everybody really that story, because it's really kind of interesting looking back at that, so many years ago.
When you talked about that, I completely forgot when data sheets were not available at all. Yeah. So when it all had to do with ITAR is the reason people can ask, well, why weren't they available? It was all to do with ITAR. They were considered, they were very worried the technical aspects of what a data sheet.
We own the night.
Yeah, the whole technical aspects of, the FOM, the signal to noise, the resolution, the EBIs, the halos. Those were all restricted information on tubes. They didn't want any of that information basically out to the mainstay. So when you first bought a PVS-14 specifically, we can go back on 2 restrictions we had. One, when the PVS-14s first came out before the Night Enforcers, ITT was selling those factory ITT fixed systems in Omni 3, Omni 4s. They all had data sheets. They all specifically had data sheets for the military. The military customers for the omnibus contract had to have data sheets. It was called out. So they had to know the specifics of the actual specifications for each one of the tubes or meet that omnibus minimum contractual obligation. So those data sheets were always available for the military and law enforcement. So when we first started selling consumer PVS-14s, we were given the data sheets from ITT, but we weren't allowed to send the data sheets with the actual units. We can tell our customers over the phone and on invoice what their specifics were, a centerline resolution, signal to noise, EBI, those sort of things. But we couldn't actually give them a physical data sheet with the PVS-14s. And it was tough because you can get accused of embellishing numbers, like no one would know. And you know, I've never been in a business at all about, you know, fooling you gung fu with night vision. It was all about, you know, the integrity of what we did, and still is to this day. But we couldn't show what was actually on the data sheets. We couldn't send those out. They were restricted from ITT because of ITAR. So it took several years to levy, you know, Moral Vision at the time, ITT, and we kept all of our data sheets in a file cabinet. And we had probably in 3 years probably over 1,000 data sheets. And they're all in our file cabinet, but we couldn't give those or send those out to the customers. So the Night Enforcers did come out. I remember the Night Enforcers came out from ITT. Those were also restricted. They were the first auto-gated power supply systems. It was kind of funny when you think back.
Yeah.
It wasn't revolutionary auto-gated power supplies. Obviously, they did a lot more than a normal automatic brightness control systems regulating the high light that helped with center line resolution as well. But we couldn't, once again, we couldn't give data sheets out, and also we couldn't sell the original Night Enforcers to the consumers. That was always also law enforcement
only.
Yeah, it's law enforcement, military only. So once again, we were selling a little bit to law enforcement at the time, nowhere near the magnitude we do now. So once again, we had to keep all the data sheets, and we couldn't even sell to the consumer market. So finally, when the floodgates opened, we levied enough all the years of, you know, kind of bugging ITT. Hey, how can we get this stuff out to the consumer market? They finally let us do it, both almost at the same time. So Night Enforcers were allowed, and data sheets. So when we released data sheets, probably 2-3 years after we were selling night vision, normal night PVS 14s and Night Enforcers, we finally were allowed to actually ship the data sheets. So you can only imagine our admin, the headache she had at the time, moving all those data sheets out of file cabinets, because obviously we had all those consumers that had all their names, addresses, everything else, and they wanted their data sheets. Or we didn't automatically send them to consumers. We put a statement out there as best we could on all the social media. It wasn't much social media back in the day, ar15.com, and more or less emails. We mass emailed folks asking if they wanted their data sheets. So it was after the fact, but we did finally get the data sheets out to about 70% of the customers who were initially ordered, because they were restricted for quite some time.
Right. Now, I think there's also more to the story there too, because it's my understanding when, you know, ITT was the primary, so we talk about them back then. You know, they had the majority of the contract for the PVS 14.
They did.
But their fallout rate was very, very high, if I'm not mistaken, right? And all the tubes that didn't meet mil spec, they weren't doing anything with them, and some people were coming in and buying those like lock, stock, and barrel and selling them. But TNVC was selling actual factory-made units that would come with a data sheet, and the problem was some people were building goggles with unknown tubes that you didn't have a data sheet. So the thing, you know, when I came on and started learning about this, it was if you're buying a night vision system without a data sheet, you have no idea what you're getting. And I also know that it made some other businesses angry when TNVC held firm to the quality of that, of like, you know, if you're not buying a factory unit with a data sheet, you have no idea what's inside that thing.
It was.
I know you were willing to die on that hill, and you know, a lot of people were angry about it back then, but I've spoken to some of those people now, and they're like, they respect you for that, even though they didn't like you for doing it back then.
Yeah, it was hard. To this day, it's challenging. We'll talk more about it with the Chinese goods that are out there that are flooding the night vision market at the moment. And it was the same thing back then. We didn't want to sacrifice quality, because I know, you know, nowadays, back then, I should say back then, I used to cliche, Don, that lives mattered.
Yes.
I mean, I lost my roommate in 1992, February 10th, 1992, Southern California law enforcement, and it was because substandard practices, substandard gear, substandard all sorts of things cost him his life. And it always echoed with me when I got into this business, I wasn't going to sacrifice gear. And I know some people nowadays don't like hearing it in the social media that, you know, it's lives matter, and they think it's a cliche. Well, it's not to me. Damn no, hell no. It's still about lives matter, Don. If I give the men and women uniform, even the consumers, the best quality gear that can save their family's life or save our men and women in uniform's life, that's what it's all about. And if you think that's all cliche, I don't care. It's what I have bound myself by. I believe it to this day. I wasn't going to throw Fallout, whatever tubes they have with no data sheet, just for the almighty profit dollar. And God knows, man, I could have made millions over the years selling substandard gear. I could do it today. I won't do it. I just won't do it. It's just not worth it. And I won't do it. Love it, hate it, call it what it is. You think it's cliche. I don't give a shit. It's who I am. It's who TNVC will be, and you know you've worked for me. You know how I am about stickler, about details, about quality, and it's always about that.
And that's why we still partner together as business owners.
You bet.
Is because
Yep.
I could get that stuff just about anywhere I want to.
You bet.
But,
I agree.
But yeah, I just think that's an important it's an important piece of history and trivia that a lot of guys they don't realize because there's a whole group of consumers that the data sheet is something they is, when I say take for granted, I don't mean in a bad way, but it's normal to them. But it wasn't always.
No, there's a reason for the data sheet. There's specific data points that need to be looked at with your tube. They do. It's just not bragging rights. I mean, some guys, look at my tube. I got a 3,000 FOM tube, and it got all the great. Got a bragging rights all over the place, right? Got Sam over here with his. Yeah, right. He's got the big FOM tubes.
Hey, I got super gains.
Right. So, but there's a lot of things to be taken from a tube data sheet of what it can tell you and everything else. So,
absolutely.
But no, it's great history, and I'm glad you brought it up, Don. Yeah. It's good history.
I remember a time when the regular guys couldn't get a laser. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why it was popular to mount a PVS-14 behind your aim point and stuff. And people are like, well, why would you ever do that? Well, and I tell them, there was a day when, the PEC 2 was it, and it was military law enforcement only. You couldn't have it. There was no such thing as a Class 1 laser. That was the only way the average guy could really shoot the gun. Because we didn't have taller mounts and stuff like that like we used to. So it was one of the solutions to shooting your guns with night vision was to mount it behind it and set it up like that. You were very instrumental in bringing the Class 1 power laser to the civilian consumer market. And the manufacturers actually gave you pushback because, even to this day, we had issues with some other friends who were manufacturers of making their versions in Class 1. But some of the very first available Class 1 lasers were at your insistence, and you took a risk.
A financial risk. Even the owner, Laser Devices, Heinz. So during the time selling night vision and doing all those things, we knew that lasers were cool, right? Mm-hmm. The PQ2As, right? Mm-hmm. They were abundant back in the day. But the only time you can get your hands on one was, considerably black market. Fell off a truck somewhere. Even law enforcement had a really difficult time getting those back time because the FDA back in the day classified every IR laser, no matter if it was 0.0001 milliwatt, if it was an IR laser, it was all categorized as a Class 1, Class 3B laser. Their thinking was, you didn't have a blink reflex like a visible laser, so you can have a 5 milliwatt laser of a visible laser, but if you got hit with it, you could kind of blink and sort of save your eyeball, where with a IR laser, there's no blink reflex. So you never want to get hit with any IR laser, above and beyond, 5 milliwatt or above 1 milliwatt will permanently damage your eye in a short period of time because there's no blink reflex, you can't see it. Yeah. So for a long time, we just seen cool pictures and the guys in the military, targeting, whatever it was that they were targeting, that were really cool internet type stuff. But I really wanted to see normal, standard, a low power IR laser to get, legalized, whatever you want to call it. What at the time it was the FDA, still to this day, controls the actual lasers of military. People don't realize that, but the FDA controls all lasers, whether it's IR laser, civilian lasers, military, visible lasers. They're all controlled from the FDA. So at the time I started selling the restricted lasers that were just getting produced from Laser Devices in Monterey before Steiner took over and acquired Laser Devices. So Laser Devices Incorporated, a gentleman named Heinz from Germany, great guy, he and his wife Marty, owned Laser Devices up in Monterey. So we started selling some lights and other things and Laser Devices back in the day, and they were told, from the story goes, and remembering from Heinz, that they were told from the U.S. government, you are going to sell and manufacture the next military laser for the U.S. Army, because they need a direct competitor for the new Aptail that was coming out. So Laser Devices was told, not asked, and Heinz didn't want to make lasers for the military. He was into other things, and talk about getting a golden nugget kind of handed to you. So he reluctantly, at the time I remember, started making the D-ball A2s. So I got to know Heinz and got to know their engineering staff real well, and I asked them, I kept asking them that we need a civilian version IR laser. There's got to be a way we can get one in civilians' hands, and their legal team and folks at Laser Devices, no way. The FDA's pretty, you got to get variances written. They were very strict on, that was not going to happen. So I kept pestering them for like 2 years. This is probably back in 2012, maybe, somewhere in there. The exact year escapes me, but somewhere in there, I kept pestering them for an IR laser, and they said, okay, we'll see what we can do. Well, I would call in every 2-3 months and ask them, hey, where are we at with the IR laser business? Is it going to happen? We don't know. We still haven't gotten any clear-cut answers from the FDA. Well, about 6 months from the January SHOT Show, sometime in the summer, I got a phone call from a gentleman, I remember his name is Joe Hotz, great guy, part of their legal team at Laser Devices, and said, Vic, we got it. We got a variance. We have permission to sell an under 1 milliwatt class 3 type laser, and it's going to be called class 1. We got the approval, and I was shocked. I was like, we got it? You're kidding me. So they said, okay, how many do you want to order? And this was going to be based on the D-ball A2 platform. It's going to have a visible laser, no illuminator, a visible laser, and an IR pointer. Yeah. So at the time, they were retailing for, if I remember correctly, about and I remember I said I would order 500. And I remember getting a phone call from Marty, that's the owner's wife, and said, and I think one of the sales directors got on a conference call with me and asked me, said, Vic, we're worried about you ordering this many lasers. We know you're a small company, you're a young company, and we don't want to see you, basically get in a hole and not be able to pay us if you can't sell 500 lasers. And I laughed, and I knew SHOT Show was right around the corner. I said, oh no, we're going to order 500 of these and we're going to be just fine. And they couldn't believe it, because you have to understand, back in the day, Laser Devices, once again, going back in my story, they were told from the U.S. government they were going to be building a D-ball A2, and they knew nothing about really the night vision market.
The market.
They knew nothing about the civilian market, the commercial market. Not many people knew at all. As you know, the companies I mentioned earlier were all kind of locked in the shadows. Nobody really concentrated on the consumer market. So they had no idea that this was ever going to sell for the consumers. I remember Joe and Heinz and Marty were saying, Vic, are you sure these are going to sell in the civilian market? Who's going to want to buy an IR laser? This is the gospel truth. People don't realize back in the day, their questions were so concerning to them, because they were worried about me being a small company and footing a bill for, do the math, 500 times whatever, 1,700, you can do the math on that. That's a lot of money back then, those dollars, right? 15, 16 years ago. And they really did not think these would be very popular. They didn't think I'd sell maybe 10. They were not too confident at all this was going to happen. So flash forward 6 months later, and believe it or not, this is back in the day, when things came out at SHOT Show, they were available. We had them on a shelf. Nowadays, when things are announced at SHOT, maybe 6 months later, 8 months, maybe 2 years later. Well, they were already on the shelf. So we had 500 lasers, IR lasers, that we announced at SHOT Show. Laser Devices had them, and we had them in our booth. And Don, this is no exaggeration, it's despite the biggest news back in SHOT Show back then. And remember, social media wasn't very large at that time, but word got out like a shot heard around the world. We sold out the first afternoon of all 500 lasers, all D-ball A2s, 500 of those. So I went running back to Laser Devices, and I think I might have sold maybe 350, and Heinz sold another 2, and he's like, he called me, Heinz and Joe and the senior director called me, get out here to our booth. and they're like, "What is going on?" And you know, it's a whole cliche. I told you so.
Yeah.
So I put another order in for 1,000, and they didn't hesitate. So that that order took about 4 or 5 months to get in, but I sold over 2,000 lasers, IR lasers, maybe even more, maybe 2,500 their first year after SHOT Show, D-Ball A2s, and it was born. The revolution of the IR Class 1 laser was born through Laser Devices and TNVC, and it's been history since. And now we have, gosh, so many companies since then selling civilian Class 1 IR lasers. So it's a great success story. It wasn't an accident. I knew it would sell. I knew back then, I knew the commercial market would embrace a civilian laser, because no one's getting them. And no one, like I said, people got tired of putting a PVS-14 behind an aim-point optic or whatever, an EOTech back in the day, because one, it wasn't good for recoil. You never want to do that. It was great for passive shooting, and you were right. We didn't have taller mounts like we have now, obviously, to shoot passively.
Yeah,
but it was still good back in the day, because even with the advent of all the lasers that were out there, it was still good to shoot PVS-14s passively, because when your adversary started getting night vision, you weren't able to be seen. You could shoot passively through a red dot. So there's some still advantages of a 14 behind a red dot. Still is today, because everybody has night vision.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely, that's a story that a lot of people don't know about. It's just it's such a common feature now, is Class 1 lasers. Pretty much every available laser, except maybe some of the real brand new ones that are just hitting the market, the Class 3s, is available as a Class 1. And people don't know how that came to be. It just wasn't.
Yeah, it makes me feel old. It's been a long. It's been a long.
It really wasn't that long ago.
It feels like 15, 16 years ago, something like that, or longer. I don't know. Yeah. It's been a while.
What about TNVC are you most proud of, as like either accomplishments or through what the company's accomplished or has done for the community or anything like that? What would you say is like the proudest moment?
So many accomplishments of TNVC. You mentioned the Class 1 lasers. What we do for the consumers to get restricted gear. We'll talk about that, of getting restricted gear out to the consumers that were normally restricted. And we hear the cliche a lot from that they think the manufacturers don't trust the consumers. That's not at all. It's always supply and demand. They're so busy with contracts they never do. But I think the proudest moment, I think with TNVC is probably hiring guys like you and the rest of my staff. I have amazing employees. You've been with me, you worked for me, you guys are like my brother nowadays. You own Greenline Tactical. We're so close. My employees, as you know, we have a very close-knit family. We've all come a long way, and we've grown quite a bit with my employees. So I think two of the proudest facts that I have is my employees and my customers. I still talk on the phone with a lot of my customers. I engage routinely with my customers about gear, like you talking with gear. I think the proudest moment is probably when I started hiring more employees, and the employees that I have now. And I've been allowed all these years. There's a funny story I'll bring about Kyle Lamb from Viking Tactics. Great guy. Kyle, if you're watching, I'll make sure I talk to you. He is one of my brothers I admire like you, a great guy. He, special operator. I called him because I was looking for some places. As I get older, I want to start fly fishing. I've never fly fished in my life, and he was talking to I called him up, said, "Hey man, he's an avid hunter, hunting elk and things like that, real outdoorsman. I have limited experience outdoorsman, and I want to learn how to fly fish." So I called him up, and I hadn't talked to him in a couple of years, which we all get wrapped up in our business. We don't have a chance to talk a lot, and the first thing he said to me, I said, "Brother, how are you?" And he looked at me, talked to me on the phone, and he said, "I wake up every morning and I can't believe I'm still doing the same thing." And it's been coming on officially 20 years with TNVC, and I wake up every morning and I still can't believe that I'm still doing the same thing, that I'm allowed through our customers, our law enforcement, and our military folks, that I'm allowed to do this job. Kyle's such a smart guy. So I am very proud of what TNVC. I'm proud of my employees, and I think that's probably what I'm most proud of is my employees and my customers. That I am allowed to do this on a daily basis for the last almost going on 20 years.
You've been very pivotal in bringing a lot of formerly restricted, unavailable items to the consumer market,
Yeah.
and you've really been kind of a bulldog about that. What
Very
are
much
some
so.
of those, and why is that a big deal to you? And what are some of those products? We talk about some of them.
We talked about earlier the class ones that were restricted. That was the first product TNVC brought to market, and it kind of was a stepping stone. That was the first product we brought out to the consumer market, and I have been a bulldog like that because I firmly believe I'm a pro Second Amendment guy. If the law enforcement, military people can have gear like that in night vision, so can general population. Whether it's protecting your family, the law enforcement, federal, whatever, that's a given. But consumers also need to have the best gear available, whether they're protecting their household with their family or if they're shooting hogs out there in Texas or Florida or wherever they're at. You need to have the best gear out there. So it kind of leapfrogged from the class one stuff that I like the gear. I mean, we all love that greatest gear that's out there. So, obviously I think the most sought off piece of gear that I've wanted over the years that we finally got just 2 years ago was panoramic goggles. The Pano goggles, marvel of technology, 97-degree field of view, they're amazing. I love them. So I wanted that for a long time to be released. And I tried for years, and it was more of an L3 contractual thing with the U.S. government. They didn't want it out there, since when DevGru at that time hit, Bin Laden out in Pakistan. All the rave was, the Pano goggles. So we were really proud 2 years ago when the Pano goggles came. Backtracking a little bit, leapfrogging off the class one, the big laser folks wanted to have out there in their guns was the APTLs, and obviously they were restricted. So we finally, after years of talking with L3, and obviously if you ever know working with L3 or ITT or any other big, billion-dollar corporation, it's hard to get things done quickly, let alone efficiently, because they're so wrapped up in military contracts.
Right.
Was the APTL. So we worked with a gentleman at L3 at the time, Pat Poirier, who worked feverishly with us to get the APTLC released. So the Class 1 civilian version APTLC, folks wanted, and you saw it on every military gun out there. We got the APTLC released back in the day as a Class 3R type illuminator with a Class 1 pointer, and we got that out to the market. Another type of revolutionary device that we came out with, I apologize, was working with Safran Optics with the E-Cody with Optics 1 was the actual, the idea of having a thermal overlay in front of your night vision to give you a thermal image was the E-Cody. That was very sought after, very restricted for many, many years. And it took about a 2-year vetting process through Safran just to get allowed to handle the products, let alone to get the permission to sell on the commercial market. And E-Cody came along. After that, we working latestly on the TAD, the new TAD type of slimmed down version of the E-Cody without the ATACs, and it's a little bit more cost effective. So we have the TAD system we're announcing at SHOT Show this year that will also be available sometime mid third quarter this year, sometime this summer as well, that we'll be coming out with. I don't know, what else have I've forgotten?
The 31s.
Yes, forgot. So gosh,
31s
so
before the
31,
panos.
yes,
Yeah.
31s before panels. So yes, thank you for those. So PVS 31s for many years. SOCOM was using PVS 31s. Once again, another restricted product that we wanted to bring the general U.S. citizen market for the general consumers. And yes, the PVS 31s was about, I think, 2 years ago. We brought that out to the civilian market as well.
And then just a myriad of being one of the first with some of the different housings like the DTMEG, DTMBS, some of the ones just always being in the forefront.
Yeah, like I said, we always try to. It's not just picking every Tom, Dick, and Harry night vision device that's out there. We really collectively, and you know this, working for us, of every system we do get. The supplier or manufacturer can say it's this, it's that. It could be the best thing since sliced breads. We have to test it for ourselves. That's why, like yourself, all our trainers that work for all of us, we test everything. So we want to test it to make sure it's the best available. So yes, DTNVS, DTNVGs, the Sentinels back in the day.
Yeah,
the new RNVGs from that back in the day. We had the new RNVG housing that just came out for the monocular. So a lot of different housing manufacturers, a lot of things that we never take anybody's word for it, but I think we've come such a long way. Suppliers and OEMs try to come to us and say, hey, TNVC, test this out. Are we on the right track? I mean, we have some new lasers coming out, new illuminators this year. We have coming out from Z-Bolt. We're really happy with that. We're going to be using a lot of their illuminators and laser systems that are coming out this year. We'll talk about more at SHOT Show. And it's another great upcoming company, more cost-effective things that are coming out there because it's going to show we really want to get the cost down on a lot of systems because they're very expensive. And and as we go through the market period at the moment, we're transitioning now to getting more lower cost night vision because the economy is not as best as it could be by all means. And as we talked about earlier, getting these new products to compete with some of the Chinese products, unfortunately. And that might be another subject for another time, but there is a lot of Chinese and market products coming out there that, it's unfortunate they're not the quality systems I depend my life on with. And obviously, we're not kicking indoors with these systems. I get that, but we still need quality systems to go out there and protect their protect our lives, our families' lives, and law enforcement lives. And we still do the same thing with that gear that we show every day out here in TNVC.
And even if you're a hobbyist, it's about value.
Yeah, sure.
If you had a crystal ball and you looked into it, where do you see the future of night vision, maybe specifically in the consumer market, and how do you and TNVC hope to, continue to be the leaders in that?
I think we're going to hopefully find more of high-end, high-tech gear coming down more meaningful and manageable pricing. I think that's important. It's important for the consumer, especially in today's inflationary type environment we live in. It's no fun, and we all feel it obviously, from the consumers, and looking for the best bang for the buck. But more importantly, you still have to be quality for what they're looking within night vision. But if I look into my crystal ball, what I see, and this is a technology that I've looked at for years, and it's not like it's Johnny come lately, night vision, but it's digital. I think digital. I've been saying this since supervision. I'm hoping.
I've been saying for years that digital's on the edge. And
it is.
So you think it's still on the edge?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I mean,
I love it because
I do. We had Psionics and a few other companies that throw their digital stuff, and I love digital. People think, TNVC doesn't like digital. It's too cheap for them, and they only work with high-end gear. No, digital has so many advantages to use digital technology. The CMOS sensors are improving, monthly that are out there that we see. I think we are in the brink. I said that with supervision 15 years ago or 10 years ago, whenever it was, and they put their first digital system out there. I keep a close eye on digital. I try every digital system that comes my way. I personally try it out. I have to try digital out. I think if I look into my crystal ball, digital is going to be there. I said this 10 years ago, so I'll probably say it again. Maybe 10 years, we're going to get there. But there's so many advantages with digital. I think from the cost perspective, if they can get it down to where it performs at least like a low end Omni 4 Gen 3. They're not there yet even with that. Yeah. I think they're Gen 2 plus because when it really, really gets dark out there, you still see the lag that you see, like the moonwalk of the 60s, right? Kind of that little stutter when it's really canopy cover, things like that, where it's really dark out there. Mm-hmm. Digital's still struggling. But that's my future, my crystal ball is digital. I think that, I hope 10 years from now we'll have this conversation again with some cigars and say we're finally
we'll be
there.
Talking about digital.
But I think night vision is still going to be there. I think the PVS 14 is not going away. I think the next crystal ball, it's not even a crystal ball we're seeing already, is fused goggles, right?
Yeah.
So the new fused goggles that are getting fielded right now, and TNVC is just had a law enforcement contract not too long ago that we're awarded for some fusing goggles. So and that's the other thing we're trying to get out there. So the next thing is, folks, we want to get some fused goggles out there for the general U.S. population. And fused goggles are fantastic, right? If I can get a pair of panel fused, the F panels, amazing technology. A little bit pricey, 6 digits, but amazing technology. So I think the fuse systems with our night visions is going to be the next wave. I think all the military by 2026, 27 is all going to be fused goggle systems, which is great for us because they bring the price down for analog goggles. So that's a good thing.
Makes it more mainstream.
You bet.
Vic, if you could only have one night vision setup, what would it be and why?
PVS 14, done.
What would you have? What about your gun? How would it be set up?
So high risers are great. I don't like the too high risers, but the 1.93 probably riser.
Yeah.
I'd have. I think it's great. With I know the whole EOTech and aim point, fight goes on. I like the EOTech reticle. I like it. I like the EOTech reticle for what I do for day and night. But if I had one system, it would be a PVS 14 by far. I've used it for years. I'm so good all the years of using PVS 14. My averted vision, when I go back and forth with my eye, I can still see a dark image, and then I go back and see an aided vision with my right eye. I can put both together. I know my brain works great with the 14. If I had one system, when all shit hit the fan, it'd be a high riser with an EOTech and a PVS 14 and just a Tor Mini type IR pointer. I'd be good to go. And some illuminator. I don't have to have any gee whiz maul or anything else on top of the gun. I can have that simple system and I'll be good to go.
Says the man that brought you panos. PVS 14 is still relevant.
Yes, it is. Always will be.
I call it the Glock 19 of the night vision world.
Yes, it is.
It just does its job.
And I didn't say it with any hesitation either. PVS 14 been asked, yeah.
Yeah. These stories are interesting. We get a chance to relive them every once in a while, and I hope everybody out there gets to enjoys hearing some of the backstories behind stuff that is everyday normal stuff.
Off camera we started, you were mentioning some things I completely forgot about. One is the IR laser stuff, the class 1 stuff. So thanks for kind of bringing all the old stuff to the surface again. And I think it's someone had to do it, I guess, and I'm glad we did. Because I don't know. I don't know if class 1, maybe somebody would have done it. I don't know, but it's been a long journey. I'm happy, like I said, I'm most proud of my employees, my customers, guys like you out there that have, you're fighting a good fight, training people, saving people's lives. I think that's what it's all about, because education's what sells. It's not technology, that's by itself, but as we always talked about, education's what sells. Right. It's the number one thing that we all do is educate night vision.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to continue to do that. You're going to continue to do that. And Sam and your crew and everybody there is going to continue to educate, and that's what we love doing it. Yeah. I mean, night vision's our passion. Training's your passion. Night vision's our passion. I'm a hobbyist. I still look up at the sky here in Nevada, hook night vision on telescopes. So still a night vision geek. Mm-hmm. So it's awesome. So thanks, Don. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.